All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the state abbreviator React challenge. So let's go ahead and fork that over to Tom Preet, my personal GitHub. All right, state abbreviator -1. That's just because I already have a previous repo called state abbreviator. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So let's continue experimenting with state, props, and inputs and transforming arrays. So release 0, create a React app, release 2, or release 1, move state data directly in the source directory. And release 2, import the state data and use it to construct a UI. The UI must include a select dropdown that contains a list of US states and a component to display the abbreviation of the selected US state once you select it from. Okay, so let's go ahead and clone that down. So I'm over here and clear. Let's go ahead and list everything and git clone state abbreviator. All right. So CD in the state abbreviator. Zoom in a little bit. All right. So let's go ahead and open that up into a new VS Code window. I've got my state abbreviator. Now let's go ahead and use the create React app. So npx create React app. Let's call it state abbreviator, I guess. Yeah, state abbreviator. Is that how you spell it? I think it is. So create React app state abbreviator. Hopefully it all loads correctly. All right, it's going to take a while, but I'm going to pause it and return when it's done installing. All right, so React, my state abbreviator React app, everything was installed. I'm going to list everything out. There's my state abbreviator. So I'm going to CD in a state abbreviator, list everything out. So you can see my package.json, make sure I'm in the right file, npm start, and then we'll go ahead and get going. All right, so got the scaffolding app of the create React app all done. Now I got to move state data directory in the root of this repo into the source directory. So if I come over here, so I need to move the state data into the source directory. All right, there we go. So our index.js is construct a UI. So let's just go ahead and inside of our app.js, so it's right here. Let's just try to render a select dropdown with a couple of items. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to say like H1 select state from drop down menu. So, all right. So I don't know how to create a select dropdown, how to create a select dropdown in HTML. All right, we have a select tag. I'm in W3 school select tag. I'm just going to copy this over. All right. So this is of cars, but we don't want cars. So we've got Volvo, Saab, Mercedes, Audi. But it looks like what we're going to want to do is somehow import the state data into our app.js. So let's just go ahead and do that now. So we can do that by just doing import state data from, let's see, state data. And because, so let's look at the state data. So I've got export default. So it's exporting default this array of data. So I can even just say like let state data equals state data, and then also export default state data. So with that, I should have access to the state data. I can test to see if the state data is being imported into this component. I can just console log state data like so. And if I open up VS Code, I'm sorry, open up the console in my Chrome browser, I can see I've got that state data right there. So now I want to, in the select dropdown, I want to render all, I'm gonna split the screen, state data. I want to display all these names. And maybe the value. So yeah, I want this Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, all the way down. I want it to display right here. So in React, what's nice is I can say like, I can display these programmatically. Const display drop down options, and I can, let's just console log the state data again. So instead of these options down here, which I'm going to need eventually, just comment these out. I'm going to want to execute this display drop down options. So if I come over here, I've got this drop down, but it's not displaying anything because I'm coming up here. It's running up, it's executing the display drop down options function, and I'm literally just console logging the state data. So in here, I can either create, let's say, let state objects, which is going to be an array. And in here now, let's just say state objects. And in here, I can do a for loop that loops through all the state data and pushes it into this array, and then just return that array. Or I can, yeah, let's just do that for right now. Let I equals 0. I is less than state data dot length, and then I plus plus. And now I can do state objects dot push. And what do I want to push in here is an option. So I could say option, instead of the value being Audi, I'm going to want it to be state data at index I dot, let's make the value is alpha because I want the value to be this, the state abbreviation. And then instead of having Audi right there, I want it to be the state data that value, or state data, the value at the index, but instead of alpha, I want it to be name, because the name is corresponding to this name key. So at the very end, I can return state objects. So now if I come over here, oh, I got each child in a list should have a unique key. So each of these options should have a unique key, and I'm just going to use the index because that's unique. So if I refresh that, there we go. I've got a list of all the states. Now I can use this for loop, but I can also just map through the state objects by not even having this array. I can actually just return state data dot map, and this takes in data and an index, and I can actually just literally return this option like so. Instead of index, think that should still, oh, not state data. Instead of value, it would be data dot index. So data dot name, and that should do the same thing. So I can do either or. I can just create a for loop, push it into an array, or I can literally return a map that takes in each individual data. So I guess this shouldn't be data. I guess this could be like an individual state. And I just return an option. And now I'm rendering those options there, like so. So you can do either or. All right. But now I want to be able to select that and have it display the state abbreviation right underneath me. So instead of name of cars, and let's do states, and I don't even need an ID actually. I don't even need states or the name either. So just like in a previous challenge where we had an on-change event handler, we can also have an on-change event handler on the select. So I'm going to create a function called handle change, which I haven't created yet. And then inside of my app, I'm going to create const handle change that takes in an event. And let's just do console.log event.target.value. And that value comes from this option element, this specific value. So it should be the state abbreviation of each state. So if I come up here and refresh this, and if I click, say, Illinois, it should display Illinois right there. It should console logs it. Massachusetts, MA, great. But now I want to be able to display somewhere down here, like an H1 tag, like the abbreviated state, display state abbreviation, somewhere right here. So maybe on this handle change, I'll set this abbreviated value to a state property or our state value. So up here, I'm going to have to import the use state because I need to store something local to my component from React. So I'm going to store const selected state and then a function called set selected state equals use state. And the initial value of the state, I'm going to have it be null or undefined. Let's just do null for right now. So on this handle change, what I want to do is, let's just see, event.target.value. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, yeah, because this is down here. Maybe I just want to display the selected state down here. So if I come over here, if I refresh, so I've got Arkansas, District of Columbia, everything's coming up in the console, which is good. But now inside of this handle change, I want to set the selected state to the event.target.value. And now it should display the selected state. So if I refresh that, Florida, South Dakota, Rhode Island, great. So what I'm doing right now is in the select, I'm displaying a bunch of drop-down options. So I'm executing this display drop-down options function, which comes up here, and which is returning the state data, which I'm importing from state data, which is all this data right here, importing that, and I'm mapping through that array, taking each individual state and the index of each individual state, and I'm returning an individual option tag with a key of the index, and the value of that option is set to the state abbreviation, and what is actually displayed for that select dropdown is the name, which is like Alabama. So that's what gets me, if I do a refresh, that's what gets all this displayed like so, which is good. But when I do a handle change, so that means when I select an option or change the value of the select dropdown, it runs this handle change function. So on change, it executes this handle change function. This handle change function takes in an event, and I'm able to extract the value of whatever I'm selecting from event.target.value. And I'm setting that to the selected state component state variable called selected state. So the initial value of this selected state component, or the selected state value, is null. And I have another function here that updates the selected state value. And so when I run this change, it updates the state and it displays the selected state right here. So if I click Hawaii right there, Montana, etc. But let's look at the, so we want a component, an individual component that displays the abbreviation of the selected US state. So we don't just want this to display the selected state here. We want a separate component that displays this. So in my source directory, I'm going to create another directory called components. This is going to store all my components. I'm going to say usstate.js, and this is going to be a component. I'm going to use a React snippet called that will automatically create the skeleton of a functional based component. I'm just going to type in RSC, and you can kind of see all the different components that create from this React snippet. So I've got a US state component that I want to render the selected state. So I want to render some H1 selected, like some US state. So inside my app.js component, let's actually split the screens there. So inside of my app.js component, I'm going to import US state from components. And down here, I'm just going to render, I'm going to say, yeah, let's actually just render US state component. Now, all right, so there's my some US state component. So I'm rendering that, some US state, but I want to be able to pass the selected state into the US state component and render that. So inside my US state component, it's going to take in some props, some property. Props is values that are passed in from the parent component. So in this case, my parent component is app.js. Some data inside of my app.js component is some data called selected state. I want to pass this data down as props into my US state component, which gets passed into this as a props. Props is a keyword. It's always just use props. And then I want to display props dot like selected state or something like that. All right. So, but I need to actually pass the selected state down into my US state component. So I'm just going to call it selected state. That's the name of the property, and the value of that prop is called selected state. So now this US state, I'm passing that data down from my parent component to my US state child component as props. In order to access that props, I can do props.selected state. There we go. So if I just do a quick refresh, there we go. So initially, US state or selected state is null. Null is being passed in the selected state here. So props.selected state is initially null. So I can come over here. I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. So is there a console log still in here? Nope. Console log selected state. And I can do props dot selected state. And now I come over here, refresh it. Notice how selected state is initially null. But when I come over here and click Kentucky, and now it's Kentucky. And that's being displayed in my US state component. All right. I also kind of want to talk to you, show you another way you can create select dropdowns. So one thing that's really nice about React is that they have a bunch of separate libraries that makes our lives easier. So I'm just going to use, instead of displaying a dropdown like this, I'm going to use a React library called React Select. So React Select is a library that allows you to create custom React dropdowns, or dropdown selects. So getting started, I'm just going to do import React Select. So import the React Select library. So I'm going to kill this and import React Select. And notice how this component works. So I can import select from the React Select library, and the select takes in some options as a property. And these options must have value and label. So I might have to change my data, my state data, to have a value and a label. And all it does is Pat takes in those options and it will display it like so. So let's see if this is, so it's still installing. But in the meantime, I'm going to comment this out. Let's see if we can get some state data to show up in a React dropdown like so. So it's still installing. But from here, it looks like I'm going to have to import select from React Select. And this is an external library. And it is still installing. And you can see what's installed is from your package.json file. So all these are external libraries, like React is a library, React DOM is a library. This is taking a long time. All right. All right, come on, almost there. There we go. Don't worry about these right here. But notice here is that React Select is installed as a dependency in my package.json file. So I can say import select from React Select. And now down here, instead of having this React Select, I can literally just call it select and pass in some options. And those options are my state data. But my state data has a name and alpha. What I'm going to need to do is change name to, let's call it label, and the value, the alpha 2, let's call that the value. So I'm literally just changing the name and the alpha 2 to something different. So here, this display dropdown, I don't even know if I need that anymore, but we'll handle that once we get to it. So if I refresh that, I need to start the server again, npm start. It's reloading the React server. It could take a little bit. Might take a few seconds. There we go. So now you can kind of see this is a little nicer looking React dropdown, but it takes up the whole screen. I don't like that. Let's just create div. I could style this, but that might take a little while. So I'm just going to do some inline styling with, let's do 25% and margin. Let's do it auto. So there we go. So we've got Alabama, but now notice how my abbreviated state isn't showing up. Just like the onChange event handler that I'm doing here in the select, I can also do it down here as well. So now if I refresh, uh-oh, what happened? Cannot read value of undefined. Let's see what that looks like. So we can come in here and console log. Let's do some debugging. Event. Let's just comment that out so it doesn't throw us an error. Do a refresh. Oh, so there's our value. That's the event. So we don't even need it. Let's call that something else. Call it, what is it? Input. Or let's call it state because that's what it is. State. So now state dot value. State dot value. And so instead of console logging it, we can pass that state. Let's actually just refresh that and make sure it works. So when I click Arizona, I get Arizona AZ, Colorado, CO. Great. So let's uncomment out that and call it state.value. So now if I refresh that, Alabama, or Alaska, California, etc. I didn't have to change anything in here. But those are two different ways you can create select dropdown. I just wanted to show you the React select library just because a lot of times they'll be using external NPM libraries. All right, so yeah, I'm not even using the select dropdown or display dropdown options anymore. So pretty much in like 3 lines of code, I'm displaying a dropdown select, whereas before I had to execute this and run a function that displays each individual option. But you can use either or. Up to y'all. Oh. Let's just go back to what it used to be like and kind of walk through. Uh-oh. Let's go back to our state data to be the same. Great. So what is happening? So when I click this handle change, it runs this handle change state. Oh, whoops. Let's call that event again. Event.target. Now everything should be working again. There we go. So this handle change takes an event, grabs that value, and sets the selected state state value to selected state. And now I'm passing the selected state down as a property to my US state component. And I can call this whatever I want, but no, I need to call whatever when I pass the selected state into the US state component. I can access this value by doing dot or props dot whatever I want. It's best practice to keep these pretty similar as far as naming convention, just so you don't get confused. All right. So with that, that is the state abbreviator. Let's stop the